The boarding pass was snatched from Ethan Cole's hand before he even had time to react, a quick, sharp, cold motion. The stiff paper was bent in the grip of the woman in the Aerovista uniform, as if it were evidence of fraud. Her voice hit the air like a blade. "I need to re-verify this. This type of ticket usually does not belong to people like you." The last words fell to the floor like poison, spreading silently, taking root. Olivia Martin looked up. A passenger behind them held their breath. A man at the priority counter froze mid-motion with his suitcase. The entire check-in area seemed suspended in a moment no one wanted to witness, but everyone understood far too well. Ethan stood still, shoulders straight, eyes calm like the surface of a dark lake without a ripple. Under that silence, something sharp began to awaken, slow and deliberate. He had seen this situation 1,000 times before, a suspicion wrapped in the word protocol, a judging glance, a question never asked of the people ahead of him, wearing bright suits, silver hair, or carrying Italian leather bags. But this time, everything was different, because they were not just wrong. They were about to turn away the most powerful person they had ever insulted, and they had no idea. The imaginary camera zoomed in on Ethan's hand, his fingers tightening slightly around the strap of his bag. No tremor, no flinch, just a small movement, carrying the weight of a mountain inside. Across the counter, the agent Sandra Mills, 46 years old, swallowed. Her heartbeat quickened. She had not expected a reaction from him, but Ethan's silence made her more uneasy than anger ever could. The man in front of her was tall, athletic, dressed in a simple shirt, no luxury logos, no $1,000,000 watch. To Sandra, that meant one thing: he could not possibly be a first-class traveler. A dangerous assumption. "I need to see the credit card used to purchase this ticket," Sandra continued, her voice struggling to stay steady but tightening at the end, as if trying to fight off her own discomfort. "And I may have to call a supervisor. This ticket needs closer inspection." Ethan did not blink. "No problem." He replied 3 words, cold, concise, without a hint of insecurity. The camera shifted to his face, calm, but his eyes held the awareness of someone who had lived his entire life in rooms where power was never distributed evenly. This was not new, not small, not something happening to him alone. It was the story of an entire system. Leonard Brooks had once told him back in business school, "Sometimes you need to let people dig their own hole and walk right into it. That is when the truth becomes undeniable." Ethan felt that sentence returning as Sandra turned away to investigate a system error that had never existed in the first place. A male employee stepped over, whispered to Sandra, glanced at Ethan, then quickly looked away. A fleeting look, but enough to say they were doubting him for the same reason society always tried to hide. A white family behind them murmured, "He does not look like someone who flies first class." Maybe he bought the wrong ticket or used someone else's points. Each sentence was a small needle trying to pierce Ethan's calm, but he stood there firm, silent, like carved stone. A silence that did not yield, did not plead, did not need their belief, just waited for them to reveal themselves. Sandra turned back. "We are still checking." Her voice softened when Ethan's eyes met hers. Not angry, not raised, just sharp, like a blade sharpened too long in the dark. "I purchased this ticket online," Ethan said. "Business class, cabin 1. Sandra forced a smile. "Yes, but as you know, sometimes the system is not accurate. The system, that word always used as a shield for bias to disguise discrimination, as caution to turn insult into standard procedure. The man at the counter next to them, a white customer around 55 years old, was upgraded for free with enthusiastic congratulations. Ethan tilted his head, slightly said nothing, but his eyes recorded every detail. Invisible notes etched into his mind: inconsistent service, discriminatory check-in, behavior, lack of bias training, no support for vulnerable passengers, weak verification protocol. Those observations would become evidence, later evidence to change the organization at its roots. Sandra finally returned the boarding pass to Ethan. She did not dare tear it, but the deep crease along its edge remained like the imprint of her contempt. "You may go," she said, avoiding his gaze. "Thank you." Ethan nodded slightly, the word carrying no gratitude at all. He walked away, but just a few steps from the counter, the imaginary camera turned back. Sandra whispered to her co-worker, "I swear something is off. That behavior, it is not how first-class customers act." Her co-worker shrugged. Who cares, they will end up in the front cabin anyway. First class is not for everyone. That line for Ethan struck like the sound of a verdict from a system that had been rotten for years. No one there knew the truth. No one knew the man they dismissed was stepping into his first day, holding a responsibility far greater than they could imagine. No one knew he would be reviewing every protocol, every number, every report, every department in Aero Vista. No one knew he had the authority to sign off on decisions that could change the fate of thousands of employees, including theirs. But they would know soon, very soon. Ethan looked straight toward the boarding gate. The golden lights reflected on the floor his footsteps echoed, slow, steady, deliberate, like the first strike of a gavel. They had started this story with doubt and disrespect. They thought they were protecting their airline standards. But they had picked the wrong person, completely wrong. And when the truth came to light, the price they would pay would not just be an apology. It would be the transformation of an entire system. The tempo rose. The heartbeat quickened. Ethan's silence became strength, became threat. True power did not need to shout it, only needed to stand still, watch people expose themselves and keep walking. The battle had just begun. Ethan walked into the security area with a calm so cold it unsettled the air around him. Yet inside, he could feel every pulse of a distorted system exposing itself in real time. The line stretched long LED lights shining down on exhausted faces, and among them, an elderly black couple ahead of him struggled to stay upright as the wife nearly buckled from standing too long. Not a single employee noticed them. Not one voice offered help. Indifference in a place where attention should have been instinctive. Ethan watched them for a few seconds, his eyes sharpening not out of surprise, but confirmation, another fragment of the larger pattern he had already anticipated. When his turn came, the pre-check scanner flashed green, but a security agent raised a hand against his chest. Additional screening. The man's voice was dry, cold, emotionless. Ethan did not react. He lifted his arms for inspection, noting each glance toward the 3 white passengers who had just walked through without being stopped. The agent never looked Ethan in the eye. He did not need to. Bias moved quietly more efficiently than any training manual ever could. In Ethan's mind, every data point logged itself like lines of code, so-called random screening, that was not random categorizing passengers by appearance, operational risk created by biased human behavior. A system not broken at the software level, but broken at the human level. He continued toward the departure gate. Olivia Martin sat near the window seats, typing rapidly on her laptop, her curly hair tied neatly behind her head. When she stood to board with the priority group, the gate agent held her ticket longer than necessary. A doubtful look, a forced smile. Another extra check they had not applied to the white man earlier, who had been upgraded for free at the check-in counter. Olivia exhaled softly, the kind of breath people familiar with discrimination could recognize instantly. As she stepped forward, Ethan approached her, his voice low but steady. "It is not just you today." Olivia turned the corner of her mouth, lifting slightly, a half-smile born of fatigue. "It is every day. I write everything down. I am waiting for the day someone actually wants to listen." Ethan responded with a calm, weighted look, revealing nothing of what he knew. Not yet. Not now. Olivia and Ethan boarded the aircraft, the warm, golden lights reflecting off the premium leather seats of first class. But no luxury could cover the scent of bias lingering in the air. At the doorway near the cockpit stood flight attendant Donna Parker. Short blonde hair, a strained smile that collapsed the moment she saw their boarding passes. "Welcome," Donna began, but the final note died in her throat when her eyes moved from the tickets to their faces, then to Ethan's simple shirt, before shifting toward the white passenger. Behind them, she had just greeted enthusiastically, like a VIP. "I need to review your tickets again," Donna said. "We already provided them," Olivia replied, calm but sharp. "I would like to verify." Donna repeated her attempt at professionalism, undercut by the fear flickering behind her eyes, a fear of losing the small authority she clung to. Tyler, the young attendant beside her, watched the scene, like someone witnessing a collision he had no power to stop. But his eyes worried. Warning and embarrassed did not escape Ethan. Everything was unfolding exactly as Ethan needed nothing concealed, nothing disguised, no blaming the system. They were exposing themselves. Every small detail was a living piece of evidence, each one forming the foundation of the sweeping reform Ethan was preparing to impose on all of Aero Vista. Ethan stepped into first class, back straight steps, steady eyes cold. But inside his mind, a single heartbeat began to thrum harder. Not from anger, but from the knowledge that he was about to witness what internal reports could never capture, how people truly behaved when they did not know who stood before them. A simple moment, in a simple day, on a simple flight. But that was exactly where truth revealed itself most clearly, and Ethan Cole always looked directly at the truth. Always. Donna Parker adjusted her neck scarf, irritation carved clearly across her face as the final first-class passenger stepped in. The people she considered real customers had already been greeted: the silver-haired businessman, the woman wearing a pearl necklace, the regular guest who tipped her every holiday. Everything had been perfectly aligned until Ethan and Olivia walked in. In Donna's eyes, their presence shifted the room off balance, not because they were causing trouble, but because they did not fit her idea of who belonged in first class. That was the moment her silent bias flipped on like a switch. Donna let Ethan pass, but her gaze followed him, waiting for the slightest slip to justify pulling up a wall of control. Ethan sat in seat 2, the cold white overhead light casting along the bridge of his nose, emphasizing a calm that was impossible to read. He unlocked his phone and typed a few short lines, not to protect himself, but to confirm that what he was witnessing was not imagined. The first-class service sequence began. Tyler carried a tray of water down the aisle. He handed glasses to the passengers in row 1, then approached row 2 with a genuine smile. Before he could place Ethan's glass on the table, Donna appeared, slicing the moment in half with a single sharp look. "We have not finished verifying the passenger list," Donna said, her voice low but heavy enough to freeze movement. Tyler hesitated. He already showed his boarding pass. "I said we are not finished," Donna replied, each word landing like a hammer. Tyler glanced apologetically at Ethan before stepping back. Donna took the tray from his hands and continued forward, completely ignoring Ethan and Olivia as if they did not exist. A white passenger in row 3 let out a soft laugh. "First class really is getting mixed these days," he said, just loud enough to be heard, but vague enough to deny later. Donna did not respond, but the slight curl at the corner of her mouth confirmed where she stood. Olivia looked at Donna, tilting her head, her eyes sharp like a thin blade. "She is trying to prove something," Olivia murmured to Ethan, quiet enough that Donna could not hear. Ethan did not answer. He observed every expression, every glance, every unconscious movement. The imagined camera panned slowly across his face, peaceful on the surface, yet carrying an ocean in motion beneath. Donna returned to Tyler and began a small lecture, her tone a mixture of professional instruction and dominance. "You have to know how to read people. You have to know who is truly a first-class customer. You have to know who belongs here." Tyler hesitated. "But the company said to treat everyone equally." Donna cut him off instantly. "That is on paper. Reality is different." The statement was too clear, too honest, too revealing for Ethan. It was the perfect summary of the problem he intended to dismantle from the ground up. Tyler lowered his head, not because he agreed, but because he did not know how to push back against a structure that had shaped the crew for years. Donna continued her service routine whine. For row 1, snacks for row 3, a warm towel for the familiar passenger in row 4. Ethan and Olivia were skipped entirely, as though they were a display error Donna refused to interact with. Olivia opened her laptop and typed quick notes about the boarding discrimination, her fingers moving with precision, as if evidence gathering were second nature. "I have reported incidents 4 times already," Olivia said softly. No one replied. "Now I understand why." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "Keep recording," he said. "Evidence is the only thing the system cannot deny." Olivia looked at him a moment longer, as if recognizing that beneath his calm was something else, a weight, a purpose, a layer of authority he had not revealed. The aircraft doors closed, cabin lights softened. Donna walked past Ethan's seat, not stopping, not looking her breath alone, betraying her discomfort. Ethan looked down at his hand. It did not move, but a single raised tendon revealed the only sign of a tightly controlled anger. He did not speak. He did not protest. He did not demand what he was owed. He did not need to. The flight had only begun, and Donna, along with everyone who thought like her, was doing exactly what Ethan needed, exposing the structure he intended to break. They believed they were asserting authority. They had no idea real power was sitting silently in seat 2A, observing, memorizing every weakness in the system he was about to lead. And no one in first class realized that every glance, every omission, every careless comment they had made was pulling them closer to the biggest shift in their careers. Ethan stared straight ahead. His eyes sharpened. The pulse of the story quickened, and they still did not know they had chosen the wrong battle with the wrong man. Donna began the first in-flight service with a level of selective attention so cold it bordered on intentional. She walked straight to the familiar white passengers in the cabin, offering a slight bow, her voice soft as velvet. "Would you like more scotch, sir? Another lemon water for you, Mum. The smile, the posture, the care, all perfectly aligned with first-class service." But the moment she reached row 2 where Ethan and Olivia sat, her entire body changed rhythm. Her shoulders lifted slightly, her eyes narrowed as if pulling a door shut. She spoke to Olivia first, but the question was thrown out in a clipped tone that sounded more like a command. Ethan was not asked anything at all. Donna moved past them so quickly that the air between them felt like the crack between two worlds that would never touch. Ethan waited. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. 15. No one returned. No one looked their way. No one considered doing anything beyond serving the guests Donna believed were the real first-class passengers. Ethan pressed the call button. A soft chime echoed the light blinking on Donna's panel. She looked at it, exhaled sharply through her nose, and continued pouring wine for another passenger as if the request did not exist. When the light blinked a second time, she finally turned, suppressing irritation as she approached Ethan. "What do you want?" It was not a service question. It was a reprimand. Ethan looked up. Sparkling water with a slice of lemon. Donna acknowledged the request with a look that barely concealed judgment. "We are busy preparing meal service." "Later." She turned away. The call light remained on. She did not turn it off. A tiny signal of disregard, wrapped in the excuse of forgetfulness. Tyler appeared next, his expression tight. "Sorry for the delay, sir. I will bring your drink right away." He set the glass down gently with both hands, as if afraid Ethan might think he was being disrespectful. "It is fine," Ethan said, though his eyes followed the direction where Donna had disappeared. From behind, Olivia leaned in and whispered, "She cannot hide it anymore. It is all coming out now." Ethan recorded it silently in his mind. Selective service bias, targeted delays, unprofessional attitude, obstructing the correct actions of a junior crew member. Donna was not just discriminating. She was teaching the next generation to replicate her worldview. Donna returned to begin meal service. She offered bread to each seat one by one. When she reached Ethan's seat, she dropped the tray down quickly and rolled the cart away, as if escaping. No preference for meat. No allergy check, no wine selection, as though serving him caused her harm. Kenneth Wilson, the white man in row 1, glanced back at Ethan and Olivia, smirking. It has been a while since the front cabin has been this diverse. Donna let out a quiet laugh, a small sound, but sharp as a thin blade. Tyler stood not far away, his face stiffening. He did not speak, but his body leaned subtly toward them, as if he wanted to intervene, but lacked the authority to break the thickening atmosphere. The meal continued, and Ethan ate in silence. Not because he was not hungry, but because silence allowed him to hear everything people did not dare say aloud. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the tension in Donna's movements each time she passed seat 2. Tiny details like grains of sand that could derail a massive corporate machine. When Ethan stood to walk toward the first-class restroom, Donna's eyes narrowed instantly. She moved to block him as though he were entering a restricted area. "That lavatory is being cleaned. You can use the restroom in the rear cabin." Ethan looked at the light above the door, glowing bright with the word vacant. "I will use this one." Donna straightened her spine, lips tightening. "I said it is being cleaned." "Both are empty." Ethan replied, his voice low and sharp, not raised but carrying enough weight to make someone insecure step back. But Donna did not step back. She held up her flimsy shield of authority, like a torn banner. "You are being disruptive. This behavior is inappropriate for first class. From row 1, Kenneth shot to his feet. What is going on here? Donna extended her hand toward him, grasping for an ally. Mr. Wilson, this passenger is not following instructions. Kenneth nodded, arms crossed, looking at Ethan with the confidence of someone who believed the natural order was being disturbed. This is the front cabin. There are rules. Olivia, seated a few rows away, never took her eyes off the scene. She lifted her phone, angled it discreetly, and began recording everything. Tyler approached his voice, small but steady. Donna, the restroom is not scheduled for cleaning at this time. Donna cut him off immediately. Tyler, this is not your concern. Ethan stood still. No step back. No step forward. No raised voice. His composure unraveled her faster than any argument could. I am asking you to return to your seat. According to my ticket, Ethan said access to the first-class lavatory is standard. Kenneth let out a derisive laugh. Some people do not always understand where they are. Donna tilted her head slightly, her eyes flashing with a moment of triumph, but it lasted only a second. Because in the next breath, Ethan looked directly at her, and his gaze was no longer the gaze of a passenger. It was sharp, steady, deep, carrying a kind of authority Donna had never encountered. He opened his mouth, a short sentence, precise, heavy as a verdict. And when it left his lips, the entire cabin would shift from discrimination to collapse. Ethan Cole was about to reveal the truth. And no one in the cabin, least of all Donna Parker, understood that the moment they believed they were disciplining him was the moment they were signing the most consequential performance review of their careers. Ethan looked at Donna. His eyes were no longer the restrained patience of an ordinary passenger. They carried the dangerous silence of a man who had reached his limit, yet remained in absolute control. Donna kept her chin high, convinced she was still standing in the position of authority. But in the instant Ethan spoke, that fragile balance shattered. His voice was low, cold, and slow, like a blade dragging across a metal. "What is your employee name?" Donna froze. It was such a simple question, too calm. Yet it carried something that turned the air into ice certainty, the absolute confidence of someone who did not fear this system at all. "Why do you need my identification number?" Donna asked, forcing herself to maintain her usual arrogance, though her voice had already lost its steadiness. Ethan responded without a heartbeat of hesitation. To include in a report, submitted directly to the executive board. Kenneth let out a short laugh. "Executive board? Who do you think you are?" Donna crossed her arms. "Are you threatening a senior airline employee? This can get you removed from the aircraft immediately. I will call the captain. You should call," Ethan said. 3 words. Slow, cold, sharp. Donna blinked, losing control for the first time in front of his unshakable composure. Tyler stood beside her lips, pressed tight, wanting to intervene, but lacking the authority. Kenneth folded his arms, standing like a judge, ready to validate the crew member he believed was in the right. Olivia raised her phone, slightly higher eyes, unblinking. Ethan stood tall, no wasted movement. "Your name," he said. "Right now." Donna attempted one last defense. "If you are unhappy with the service, you can submit feedback through the online form." I am not obligated to. Ethan cut in his voice so low, everyone leaned slightly forward just to hear him. "I do not fill out forms, I sign decisions." The entire cabin fell silent. Every word he spoke needed no explanation, because it carried the weight of a title no one here had imagined. Donna swallowed. A tiny movement, but not missed by Olivia, Kenneth, or the onlookers waiting for this difficult passenger to be escorted off the plane. Donna stammered, DC, what decision? Ethan stepped half a pace forward, not threatening, simply closing the distance, so his words hit with full force. Decisions concerning flight attendants who engage in discriminatory conduct in the first-class cabin. Donna's face drained of color, a moment so brief yet enough for Tyler to realize the entire situation had just flipped. Kenneth stepped back, his confidence wavering as though he finally recognized the storm he was standing beside was not the one he assumed. Donna struggled desperately to regain her footing. "Are you pretending to be upper management?" Ethan stayed silent. He did not confirm. He did not deny. He simply looked at her, and the look alone answered every question. Tyler suddenly spoke, his voice soft but clear. "Miss Parker, I think he might be the person mentioned in the internal announcement this morning." Donna jerked toward him. "What announcement?" Tyler swallowed hard. "About the new chief executive officer." Donna laughed, a shaky, uneven sound. "A new CEO, do not tell me." Ethan opened his wallet. He pulled out a cold, black metal card, the Aerovista logo engraved into it. He placed it in Donna's hand without another word. Donna looked down. Her hand trembled. Her eyes scanned the line of text, and she turned rigid as stone. Ethan Cole, Chief Executive Officer, Aerovista Airlines. The cabin felt as though the air had been sucked out. Kenneth's mouth hung open, but no sound emerged. Tyler stood frozen, then bowed his head slightly out of instinct. Olivia lowered her phone but kept recording. Donna lifted her gaze, but her eyes no longer belonged to a woman in charge. They were the eyes of someone who had just dug her own grave. Her voice cracked. "I did not know, I did not. I did not mean." Ethan took the card back. "There is no need to justify anything." His voice was not angry, not loud, just cold as a mirror. "Call the captain and the ground operations manager once we land. We will be discussing first-class service procedures and what you have just done." Donna stepped back as if the floor had tilted beneath her feet. Kenneth moved out of the way, holding his breath. Tyler whispered almost in remorse. "Sir, I am sorry. I should have spoken sooner." Ethan looked at him. "You did the right thing by telling the truth." The sentence was simple, but it opened the first ray of light in the cabin, a chance for a young employee who still had time to choose integrity in a system long warped. Donna clutched her arms to her chest, her face both pale and burning. Ethan turned away, walking toward the first-class lavatory. "I will still be using this restroom." Each step he took sounded like the echo of a verdict no one dared breathe against. The door closed behind him. And inside Aerovista Airlines' first-class cabin, everyone understood a single truth. They had just witnessed the dividing line between real power and imagined power stripped bare with one sentence. Donna Parker believed she was upholding the airline's standards. Instead, she became the living proof of why those standards needed to be rebuilt. And Ethan Cole, the man she tried to diminish, was the one who would begin that reconstruction the moment the plane touched down. The battle had shifted sides, and the system had begun to tremble. The restroom door had barely closed behind Ethan when the first-class cabin sank into a silence so tight it felt like a steel wire ready to snap. Donna stood frozen in place, both hands gripping her service tray as if it were the only thing keeping her upright. Every layer of confidence, arrogance, and fragile authority she had built around herself collapsed in a single breath. Olivia glanced at Kenneth. The man who had so eagerly defended Donna minutes earlier now sat rigid, his face flushed not with anger, but with embarrassment. Tyler stood in the corner, his hand clenched, not out of fear of Donna anymore, but because the truth had erupted too fast, too sharply, too overwhelmingly for him to process. When Ethan returned to the cabin, every movement he made shifted the air, not because he was trying to project power, but because power was already built into him, a quiet, rigid, steady force, completely under his control. Donna hurried forward, her voice trembling. "Mr. Cole, I want to apologize. I did not know." Ethan looked at her. There was no anger, no harshness, but there was also no forgiveness. Only the cold assessment of a man who had heard far too many apologies used as bandages for a rotten system. "You did not know who I am," Ethan said, "but you knew exactly what you were doing." Donna opened her mouth. No sound emerged. Ethan walked back toward seat 2, stopping beside it without sitting. He looked around the cabin as though he were evaluating an entire operational structure rather than a handful of people. His gaze made every passenger lower their eyes. A flight attendant from the rear cabin stepped forward, unaware of the situation, but the moment she caught the tension in the air, she froze mid-step. Tyler swallowed hard and stepped toward Ethan, as if determined to show he did not stand with Donna. "Sir, if you need anything at all, your name is Tyler, correct?" Yes, sir. I saw how you handled the situation." Ethan said, his voice just loud enough for Donna to hear. "Some people mistake silence for complicity. But you tried to speak up. That is worth acknowledging." Tyler bowed his head, his eyes warming with gratitude, recognition he had never received under Donna's shadow. Donna stepped back again. The praise was for Tyler, but it was equally a verdict against her. Kenneth abruptly stood, his voice shaking. "Mr. Cole, I was not part of this. I only thought. You thought your bias was truth," Ethan replied. Not loud, not condemning. But it sliced the air cleanly in half. Kenneth dropped back into his seat, his face burning, his mouth opening and closing without words. Olivia watched everything, her eyes bright, not with satisfaction, but with the rare feeling of seeing justice appear exactly when and where it should. Ethan finally sat and buckled his seatbelt, but the tension did not fall with him. It stayed hovering over everyone like unmoving gravity. Donna gathered what remained of her composure and stepped forward once more. "Mr. Cole, please do not, Miss Parker." Ethan said, his voice low as a steel door sliding shut. "You will continue your duties on this flight. Not because I need you." He paused long enough for Donna's heart to skip. "But because I want to observe further." Donna inhaled sharply, fighting back tears as she turned away. No one in the cabin breathed too loudly. If Ethan removed her from the flight right now, no one would object. But he did not. He never acted from impulse. He acted from purpose, and his purpose was larger than a single flight attendant. It was the entire Aero Vista organization. He opened his phone and typed, not a message, notes. Notes that would become an emergency meeting with the executive board the next morning. Donna glanced at the screen and stepped back, as if each letter he typed carved another line into her career's tombstone. The aircraft quieted for a few minutes before the captain's voice came through the speaker. A routine announcement, but in this cabin it sounded like the prelude to another storm. Donna was forced to resume service. Each step she took, each drink she placed, each brittle sentence trembled like those of a defendant awaiting judgment. Tyler watched her with a mix of sympathy and the understanding that consequences had finally arrived. The other passengers sat still, No one dared make a snide remark. No one pretended they did not know what had happened. The silence itself in a cabin, usually buzzing with soft chatter and service noise, became a form of collective confession. Olivia whispered to Ethan, "I have never seen anything like this on any flight." Ethan stared straight ahead. "It needed to happen? And this is only the beginning." Donna's eyes twitched. She heard that sentence. Her heart thudded. The beginning. If this was only the start, what awaited her when the plane landed? And for the first time in her 25-year career, Donna Parker feared the uniform she wore. The fear did not come from Ethan's authority. It came from the realization that she now had to face the truth. The system she had relied on was changing, and this time she could not hide behind procedure, experience, or instinct. Ethan leaned back, eyes closing for a brief moment. He was not resting. He was calculating. And when he opened his eyes again, the world of Aero Vista would no longer be the same. And neither would Donna. The journey was reaching the point where false power could no longer hold. Only real power, quiet, sharp, and uncompromising, was preparing to sweep through the entire system. Ethan Cole did not need to raise his voice. The entire airline would hear him. And change. At any cost, the aircraft gave a gentle tremor as it entered stable air. But inside the first-class cabin, stability was the one thing that did not exist. Donna tried to stand upright, yet her hands trembled beneath her service cloth. Every time she passed Ethan's seat, she avoided his eyes, as if his gaze were a spotlight shining directly onto her wrongdoing. Ethan continued to observe, not to punish, but to understand the system he was about to dismantle from its foundation. The way Donna communicated, the way passengers reacted, the way Tyler corrected mistakes quietly, the way a first-class cabin prided itself on protecting standards while actually recycling old prejudices. Olivia watched it all like a film she knew the pattern of by heart, except this time the ending would be different, because the most powerful character was not standing outside the story. Donna attempted to restore her professional mask as she pushed the drinks cart down the aisle, but the eyes tracking her every step cracked that mask beyond repair. When she served Kenneth a refill of wine, her voice came out overly sweet, overly strained, soaked in fear. Kenneth accepted the glass but didn't dare glance toward Ethan anymore. Power had shifted, and everyone felt it. Tyler approached row 2 and placed a warm towel on Ethan's table. If you need anything else, just let me know." Ethan gave a small nod. It was slight, but to Tyler it felt like a weight lifting off his entire body. Donna stood behind him, watching the moment, her eyes reddening as she realized the authority she had built over 25 years was dissolving layer by layer. When the main meal service began, every discriminatory habit Donna had once acted on without thought now became a blade turning against her. Each time she delivered Ethan's meal, slowly, Olivia noted it. Each time she hesitated, Tyler stepped in. Each time she stuttered, Ethan recorded it mentally. Donna felt like she was under a microscope. No hiding place. No allies. No excuse of professional instinct. Only the bare truth that her bias existed, not because she lacked awareness, but because she had been allowed to act this way for too many years. When the service lights dimmed into sleep mode, Donna could not take it anymore. She slipped quickly into the galley, gripping the counter edge, breathing hard. Tyler followed. "Miss Parker, are you all right?" Donna spun around, her voice, sharp but weak. "I have lost everything." Tyler looked at her, not with fear or obedience, as before, but with sincerity. Did you lose it? Or did you let it crumble on its own? Donna froze. A simple question, but it pierced straight into the place she avoided looking at. Tyler continued. I used to think you were good at this job. But being good does not mean you get to be unfair. Donna wanted to argue, but her throat locked up. Ethan suddenly stepped into the galley, making both of them jump. We are beginning our descent, he said. No emotion, no anger, but sharp enough to make the galley shrink around them. Donna straightened, trying to hide the shaking. Mr. Cole, I want a chance to explain once we are on the ground. I did not mean I only. Ethan looked at her the way a doctor looks at a patient refusing to accept their diagnosis. You only did what the system allowed you to do. Donna blinked as tears welled. Ethan continued, the problem is not just you. It is the entire mechanism that shaped your behavior. Donna's breathing quickened. But will I be fired? Ethan paused. In that pause, Donna nearly collapsed. Your future, Ethan said, depends on whether you have the courage to face the truth. Donna covered her mouth as if to stop herself from breaking down completely. Olivia watched from afar, her expression not cruel, but understanding, knowing that real change begins not with punishment, but with confrontation. Kenneth stared downward, realizing he too was part of the problem. Tyler stood straighter than he had the entire flight, aware that every moment unfolding would be retold through his entire career. When the plane trembled softly, signaling descent, Ethan returned to his seat. He fastened his belt. He did not look at anyone, but everyone looked at him. They were not looking at a first-class passenger. They were looking at the man who would define the airline's future. A passenger whispered to her husband, if he really is the CEO, everything is about to change. Not about to, the husband replied. It already has. Donna sat in the jump seat. For landing, her hands clenched until her knuckles whitened. Not because she feared losing her job, but because she understood he was right. She had been protected by the system for too long, and now that system was about to be rewritten by the very man she had dismissed. The view outside the window sharpened. Chicago emerged below cold stern, ready to witness a confrontation larger than any flight. The cabin went silent as the wheels struck the runway. That jolt did not just mark the end of a journey, it marked the beginning of an audit of the entire Aerovista Airlines culture. Donna closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, her world had changed. Ethan unbuckled his seatbelt. No announcement, no declaration, but everyone knew the meeting ahead would not decide the fate of a single flight attendant. It would decide the fate of an entire culture. And no one on that plane could escape the truth landing with them. The aircraft door opened, and the cold Chicago air swept into the cabin like a warning. Passengers stood, yet none hurried to leave. Not because they wanted to wait their turn, but because they wanted to see what would happen to the woman who had just destroyed 25 years of her own reputation. Donna stood by the door forcing a polite smile, but every passenger walking past glanced at Ethan as though witnessing a verdict waiting to be delivered. Olivia stepped out, first her phone, still in her hand, holding the truth Aerovista had ignored for so many years. Tyler followed silent, his eyes fixed on Ethan, as if searching for the moral anchor he had always hoped this profession would provide. When it was Ethan's turn to leave, Donna nearly stopped breathing. She bowed her head. Mr. Cole. Ethan did not pause. Meet me in the VIP lounge. A light command, but enough to drain the color from Donna's face. Ethan walked into the jet bridge back straight each step, weighted by the mission ahead. At the end of the walkway, a woman waited for him, tension taut in her posture. Victoria Lewis, Regional Director for the Midwest, 45 years old, the one who had received the captain's urgent call. "Mr. Cole," she said, her tone a mix of respect and panic. "I sincerely apologize for what happened. I have prepared a private meeting room. Human Resources is ready to process an immediate suspension." Ethan looked at her for a long second. "You think the problem lies in one flight attendant?" Victoria froze. That question shattered every script she had prepared to calm the situation. They entered the VIP room, a cold, bright space smelling of new leather, the hum of the ventilation system, like the steady breath of a machine awaiting judgment. Donna and Tyler were already seated. Tyler stood the moment Ethan entered. Donna tried to present herself like a seasoned employee, though her hands were clenched so tight her knuckles were white. Ethan did not sit immediately. He looked at Donna not with malice, not with pity, but with the clarity of truth pointed directly at a person's weakest point. "Ms. Parker," Ethan began. His voice was even, steady, free of unnecessary emotion. "Is there anything you want to say before we proceed?" Donna inhaled shakily. "I truly regret what happened. I did not mean to discriminate. I was acting on instinct from years in the job. I have been under a lot of stress. The divorce, finances, long duty hours." Ethan raised his hand, slightly stopping her. "You are explaining reasons," he said. "I am asking for the truth." Donna fell silent. Ethan continued. "Did you discriminate?" The room froze. Victoria stared. Tyler bit his lip. Donna opened her mouth. "The escape route's gone." Maybe I did." Ethan did not blink. "Not maybe." Donna trembled. "Yes." Ethan sat down. "That is an answer this system has never forced anyone to say aloud." He turned to Victoria. "I want every complaint record from the past 5 years, include past investigations, interview reports, and the names of those who dismissed the cases." Victoria gasped. Right away tomorrow morning," Ethan replied. "Not one page missing." She nodded rapidly, like someone trying to match the pace of a storm, far beyond her expectation. Tyler suddenly spoke. "Mr. Cole, Donna. She is not always like this. But she has moments when I think she does not understand the consequences." Ethan turned to him, his gaze firm but not cold. "Mr. Brooks, I saw how you handled yourself on the flight. Your initial silence came from fear. But you corrected yourself. That matters. I remember." Tyler lowered his head, shoulders easing at last. Donna watched the exchange, her eyes filling. The contrast was painfully clear, a young crew member willing to change, and a veteran clinging to old power so tightly she no longer noticed it rotting. Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping heavy as a judge's gavel. "Ms. Parker, you will be placed on temporary suspension, with pay." Donna gasped. She thought the punishment had arrived, but it had not. "During this period, you will complete mandatory retraining on unbiased service and participate in community work with organizations supporting vulnerable passengers." Donna stared at him, stunned. Not terminated." Ethan looked straight at her. "If I fire you now, you become the symbol of one individual's mistake." His voice lowered further, sharp, deep, resonant. "But I did not come to Aero Vista to correct one person. I came to correct a system." Donna broke into tears. Not because of the penalty, but because, for the first time in her life, she understood she was part of a problem far bigger than herself. Ethan stood. "This meeting is concluded. We will speak again." Victoria bowed her head. Tyler stepped back respectfully. Donna did not dare lift her face. Ethan walked away, and every step he took marked the end of an old era and the beginning of a new one. A directive that every behavior would now be examined under the light he had just switched on. And everyone understood. No one at Aerovista would ever be able to turn that light off again. The meeting the next morning at Aerovista headquarters was unlike any meeting Ethan had ever attended in his entire career. Not because of the tension, he was far too familiar with rooms where people wielded power like a weapon. This time was different because he had not come to debate. He had come to rebuild the foundation of an organization that was rotting from within. The moment Ethan stepped into the large conference room, the chatter died instantly. 20 senior executives sat around the table, many of them people who had long assumed the right to decide the fate of the entire airline. They all looked at him, the new chief executive officer they only knew through files and internal memos. None of them knew he had just experienced a flight that exposed the cracks in their service culture. Ethan pulled out his chair and sat. He did not rush to open documents or exchange greetings. He simply surveyed the table as if assessing a battlefield before issuing orders. Let's begin. An older executive, Franklin Pierce, silver-haired and condescending, leaned forward. "Before you begin," he said, "I would like to address an issue. What happened yesterday on that flight, I have been informed that you overstepped. A seasoned flight attendant is being disciplined over a misunderstanding." Ethan twirled the pen between his fingers, then rested his gaze on Franklin, the way a judge looks at a defendant. "A misunderstanding?" Franklin scoffed. "I was told you flew incognito to provoke a situation, a kind of trap." Ethan leaned back slightly. "You think I need to manufacture a situation to prove there is a problem?" The stillness of his tone froze the entire room. Franklin let out a dismissive laugh. Regardless, a chief executive officer disguising himself as a passenger to find fault with the staff is highly unprofessional. Ethan placed the pen on the table. Not forcefully yet, the sound was loud enough to make every spine straighten. "I was not looking for the faults of employees," he said. "I was looking for the faults of the system." Another executive, Gregory Bennett, the chief operating officer, leaned forward. "We are facing a financial crisis. The company's priority needs to be profits, not social issues." Ethan opened a folder. The pages flipped like metal clashing. "You call this a social issue?" He turned the screen towards them. Complaint statistics showing discrimination accounted for nearly 30% of all negative feedback over the past 3 years. Revenue from business travelers of color had declined steadily. First-class satisfaction scores had plummeted. "This," Ethan said, "is a business problem." Franklin let out a mocking noise. "A flight attendant is rude to you, and you want to overhaul the entire company." Ethan stared directly at him. A heavy silence dropped onto the table. "Not because she was rude," he replied. "Because you buried 7 nearly identical complaints and disciplined no one." Shock rippled across the room. Gregory shot up from his chair. "That cannot be." Ethan placed a thick stack of files on the table, the ones Victoria had sent at dawn. "I have read them," he said. "They all follow the same pattern, all dismissed. And all are signs of a culture of tolerance for misconduct." Franklin's face twisted. "Are you accusing the entire executive team?" "No," Ethan said. "I am accusing the way you have been running it." A younger executive inhaled sharply, as if wanting to interrupt, but he stopped when Ethan stood up and turned on the large display. "Let me make this clear. His voice remained calm and steady, but every sentence landed like a hammer. Aerovista is failing not because of front-line staff. They only reflect the culture management created. We are failing because of arrogance, outdated processes, the belief that discrimination is a minor issue, and fear of change. He scanned the room. As of today, those things end. Franklin slammed a hand on the table. If you insist on pushing this agenda, I will file a formal objection with the board. Ethan looked at him as one would look at an old shadow, clinging desperately to a wall before being wiped away. Mr. Pierce, Ethan said slowly, your objection has already been approved by the board. App approved? Franklin frowned. Ethan nodded. The board agrees that Aerovista requires fundamental change. Anyone unwilling to support that change is free to leave. Gregory shot up again. What does that mean? Ethan tapped lightly on an envelope on the table. I accept your resignation, Mr. Pierce. The room erupted in whispers. Franklin Pierce's face flushed purple. You have no authority. Ethan lifted the envelope. You submitted this letter this morning. Franklin froze, realizing he had trapped himself in his own arrogance. Gregory looked around desperately, hoping someone would support him, but no one moved. Still, he attempted to resist. If you keep removing experienced leaders who will run this airline. Ethan's response was immediate. People who respect passengers. A beat. People who understand that discrimination is not a standard. Another beat. People who know ethics do not reduce profits, they increase them. Gregory's face burned. I do not accept this. Then you may leave the room, Ethan said. Not loud, not threatening. But the force behind his words made Gregory's spine stiffen. Two other executives, long-time allies of Franklin, rose quietly and exited. Their silence was admission. Their departure was proof. When the door closed behind them, Ethan turned to the remaining executives. No one moved. No one spoke. No one even dared breathe too loudly. Whoever stays, Ethan said, will be accountable for building Aerovista's new culture. He tapped his pen against the table. No more ignored complaints. No more favoritism. No more cover-ups. No more silence. He looked at each person in turn. If any of you cannot commit to that, leave now. No formalities needed. No one stood. Ethan nodded. Then we begin. The meeting shifted into a new phase, a phase of reconstruction. The air remained tense, but it was the tension of people who realized they had just stepped out of the shadows and into the light for the first time in years. And as Ethan sat down and opened the first slide of the reform plan, everyone in the room understood it was not only Aerovista that would change. The entire aviation industry would have to change with him, because for the first time in decades, a chief executive officer was not afraid to confront the truth. And that truth, wearing a simple shirt, speaking in a low, steady voice, with eyes sharp as metal, was ready to tear everything down and rebuild it from the ground up. Now, Ethan said, we begin a new chapter for Aerovista. None objected. None dared. Because they all knew this chapter would be written with real power, the power of justice. 3 months after that decisive meeting, the Aerovista headquarters no longer carried the atmosphere it once did. The hallways held fewer defensive whispers. More meeting room doors stayed open. Employees no longer avoided eye contact with management. Small signs, but unmistakable ones that a culture was changing from the inside out. Ethan walked into the morning executive briefing, his stride still calm, yet everyone in the room felt the gravity of his presence had evolved. Not loud, not forceful, but strong, clear, impossible to overlook. "Let's begin the quarterly report," Ethan said. His voice was gentle, yet it landed on the table like the start of a structural reset. Tamara Johnson, once ignored by the old leadership team, now sat as Vice President of Human Experience. She opened her laptop and presented. Customer satisfaction is up 47%. Complaints about discrimination have nearly been cut in half. Voluntary employee resignations have dropped significantly. Ethan nodded. Good, but not enough. It was not criticism. It was a reminder that his path extended far beyond numbers. Gabriela Morales, the new chief operating officer, continued. "We have improved check-in processing times. The ground service team has revised priority procedures for elderly passengers and passengers with special needs." Ethan asked feedback from the community positive, especially from business travelers of color. They say they are seeing real change for the first time. Ethan did not smile, but his gaze softened slightly. This was exactly what he sought. Real change. Olivia entered the room now, serving as Director of Customer Experience Strategy. People who once saw her as just another mistreated passenger now stood to greet her when she passed. "Mr. Cole." Olivia placed a report on the table. "Survey findings show the biggest impact does not come from policy. It comes from employees feeling empowered to refuse bias." Ethan replied, "Because they watched leadership do it first. The air in the room thickened with clarity, the understanding that this was not cosmetic reform. This was a transfusion. But the deepest transformation was not happening at headquarters. It was happening in the airplanes." Donna Parker, after 3 months of suspension and retraining, stood in the training center, wearing a freshly pressed uniform. Her posture was straight, her voice steady. But the old arrogance was gone. "When I first started this job, Donna told a class of new flight attendants, I thought service meant control. Protecting standards. Deciding who belonged in which cabin. The room went silent, every eye following her every word. Donna's voice softened. I was wrong. I was wrong for many years, and I caused harm I never saw." Tyler stood behind her, now an inclusion training coordinator. His eyes no longer feared her. They carried respect, because he had seen a person rip apart her worst self to become someone better. Donna continued, "If you think your job is to protect the airline's elite image, forget it. Your job is to protect the dignity of passengers, every passenger." Those words from the Donna of a few months ago would have sounded hollow. From the Donna of today, they were truth forged through 3 months of confronting darkness within herself. In another wing of headquarters, Kenneth Wilson, the man who once stood against Ethan on the flight, waited anxiously outside a conference room. When Ethan stepped out, Kenneth approached. "Mr. Cole, I want to apologize again. And thank you." Ethan looked at him. Not angry, not cold. Just evaluative. "What have you done with that lesson?" Kenneth inhaled deeply. "My company just launched a bias training program modeled after Aerovista's. I do not want to repeat past mistakes." Ethan nodded. A nod that acknowledged genuine effort, not empty apology. The next 3 months passed with the same intense momentum as the first, but one truth stood clear. Aerovista was not just recovering, they were leading. Business Era Month released a special issue. On the cover was Ethan standing before a cockpit window, blue light reflecting across his face. The headline read, "The Inclusion Revolution, Aerovista Brings Ethics to the Flight Deck." When the issue arrived in Ethan's office, he did not look at his own image. He looked at the subtitle, "An airline once drowning in discrimination, now sets the standard for the entire industry. That was the goal. Not applause, not recognition, but a path built so no one like Donna would ever fall into the gravity of a broken system again. As Ethan prepared to leave for the day, Miranda, his assistant, knocked. "Mr. Cole Southwest wants to schedule a meeting. They want to learn about our new training model." Ethan said only one sentence: "Add them to the discussion list," because this was no longer the reform of a single airline. It was the spread of a new standard, one he built through action, not declarations. That evening, Ethan boarded a random flight, still wearing a simple shirt, still concealing his identity. He wanted to know whether the system had truly changed, or only changed when he was present. When he stepped into first class, a young flight attendant smiled warmly. "Welcome back, sir. Your seat 2A is ready. No ticket scrutiny, no hesitation, no judgment. Just service, just respect." As the plane lifted from the runway, Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Not to rest, to confirm. Aerovista had shifted course. Not through a policy, but through a philosophy woven into every person. He opened his eyes. Cabin lights cast a soft glow across his face. Ahead, the work remained long, but the foundation was set immovable. For the first time after months fighting a corrupted culture, Ethan allowed himself one slow breath, because now he knew Aerovista had learned how to fly correctly, and it would never return to the place it once was. From the perspective of a systemic justice expert, Ethan's story reveals an undeniable truth. Injustice does not begin with individual actions, but with structures that have grown far too comfortable enabling bias. His strength does not come from his position as chief executive officer, but from his ability to turn a single moment of discrimination into the catalyst for rebuilding an entire culture. When leadership chooses to confront the truth, change stops being a slogan. It becomes the new standard. If you believe that respect must be built from the system itself rather than from surface-level apologies, then like and subscribe to continue following stories that expose injustice and drive real transformation. And leave a short comment with the phrase "renewal" to affirm that you stand on the side of meaningful change.